All right. Well, hello and welcome for that workshop about managing stress as a small business owner. So Chloe already introduced me, so I'm not going to spend time on this, but if you want to join me, I put here the QR code for my LinkedIn profile. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Uh, so the objectives of the workshop are threefold. First, to understand what are the key stressors that are unique to small business owners. Um, any human lives stress, go through stress, but as business owners, we have particular cases of reasons why we are maybe even more stressed. Okay, we put ourselves in that situation if you think about it, because we choose to be entrepreneurs. Um, then I'm going to talk about how to prevent stress, because I know the subject is about managing stress, but what about preventing it before we actually need to manage it? So that's what we're going to talk about. And then finally, I'm going to share with you some techniques based on that were taken from personal development programs such as neuro-linguistic programming, cognitive behavior therapy, and emotional freedom tapping to actually find ways and use tools to mitigate the stress. I don't know if we can really live without stress at all, but at least, to not make it so important in our life and so problematic in our business life. All right, so let's talk about stress. What is stress first? Well, it's the body's natural response to changes and challenges. We humans are wired to predict potential dangers and threats. It's dating from when we all lived in caves, and we had to be careful about our environment. You know, there might be a lion ready to jump on you and eat you alive. And so we had to have systems or maybe some sort of antennas of problem, threat, and that's the problem is right now there aren't that many lions around anymore, maybe a few bears in BC, but not downtown Vancouver, depending on where you live. So we actually we are still using that system, that survival system, when we don't need it so much anymore. And the problem is that even in the likelihood that the problem is low, our minds focus on possible negative outcomes. So that's the leftover of when we were, again, living in caves. And it's our reptilian lizard brain, as we call it, that is reacting rather than thinking. So what are the consequences of stress? First, emotional reactions. So that creates anxiety, nervousness. We can go through sadness, depression, and we feel overwhelmed, which are not good things when we need to manage a business. You know, you don't want to feel overwhelmed. That prevents you from thinking logically. We also have physical reactions, muscle tension, fatigue, exhaustion, headaches, stomach aches, all that stuff that, again, prevents us from being efficient and productive in our businesses. And finally, behavioral reactions. And these can translate into changing in eating habits. Maybe we're going to eat more, or we're going to eat less, or we're going to eat stuff that are not good for us. And we might withdraw from social interaction, which again are not a good thing. When you're in business, you want to network, you want people to get to know you. You might use more substances that are such as alcohol and cigarettes and drugs, another bad thing. And finally, also you might procrastinate and you might avoid responsibility. And when you're a small business owner, you're the only person responsible in the business. So if you start to procrastinate and avoid those responsibility, that's not going to be good. And again, so when is it showing up? It shows up when you feel under pressure, when you feel threatened, and when you feel unable to control the situation. And that last one, I mean, the other two are important, obviously, but that last one is predominant, I think, because we stress a lot of time on things that we have no control on. Okay, so again, it's our reptilian lizard brain. It's also, there's a book it's a great book, and I would recommend you to read it. It's called The Chimp Paradox. It was written by Professor Steve Peters, and the way he describes that part of our brain that reacts is he calls it the chimp. And the chimp, so you have the chimp, and then you have it's called the human brain. And the chimp is quick to react, and he is often irrational, and sometimes that undermines rational decision making. Again, bad thing when you're a business owner. So one of the problems that we have is that we overthink the future. We have a natural desire to control future outcomes, but we don't know what the future is going to be. We don't know. Nobody planned on COVID, for example. That was super unexpected. So, and we tend to worry about the future when we don't know what the future is. And this leads to excessive worry about situations that rarely happen. I remember seeing an image on Facebook, and I didn't find it again because I saw it many years ago. But basically, it was something like 97% of the things I'm worrying about never happen. You know, and we need to think about that. A lot of things we worry about, they're never going to happen. And we tend to think about the past to predict the future. That's another thing. You don't know. You don't know. You can only suspect that something you did good in the past might be good for the future, or something that was bad in the past. Well, is it going to be that bad for the future? Maybe not. So, see, we create our stress, really. So there are actually two types of stresses. There is one that is positive and one that is negative. So first, the positive stress, it's called eustress. And that's a good thing because it can motivate us. You know, like when we have deadlines, when we are preparing for a presentation, you know, we're motivated because we have a bit of adrenaline that comes up thanks to the stress. The problem comes when we have too much stress, which is called distress, you know, it's negative stress. And it's when it's excessive or chronic. So a lot of time it starts by being a positive stress. Let's say we have a deadline for a project and we are all excited and everything is good. But then we have another project coming in and another one, and then it's piling up. And that's when we turn into negative stress because that's too much. Our body cannot take it anymore because when we're stressed, our body creates some hormones that keeps us abreast again and good for when we have a project to work on, but too much of it, and then it starts to be bad for us. So when are entrepreneurs usually stressed? Well, I'm going to share with you some situations, and I ask you to think about your own situation and see which one you think is the situation that is the most stressful to you. Oh, I see I'm missing part of this. Oh no, sorry. I changed my slide just a few minutes ago, so that's why. So first, the financial concerns. So we have uncertainty about cash flow. We don't know when the money is going to come in again. Well, that's part of being an entrepreneur. You know, you have to work, you need to find clients, and hopefully money will come in. Profit margins. That's the case for a lot of new entrepreneurs. They don't know how to calculate their margin. You know, sometimes they think that if they're too expensive, then no clients are going to come because, you know, they don't know them. But then the problem is when they're too low, well, then they might have a problem with cash flow because, you know, offering a service similar to your competitors, but that at a lower price, well, you have to work more, you know, to make the same amount of money. So that's there are a lot of questions about profit margins. And then also about investing your money. Do you need to buy that equipment or do you need to rent it? You know? So those are concerns related to financial to the financials. Other situation that is very stressful for entrepreneurs is the work overload and deadlines. Even more so if you're just by yourself in the business, because you have to manage multiple tasks. As a solopreneur or small business owner, you have to work on things that maybe you don't even know anything about. You know, maybe you were a plumber as an employee and you were a super good plumber, but then you're like, okay, I'm going to create my business. And suddenly there are so many other things to do that you don't know about. So that's, you have to manage many tasks, you know, and you have tight deadlines. You might have limited resources as well. If it's only you taking care of everything, well, obviously that's going to be very stressful. We all have 24 hours in a day. You also live in a world of uncertainty and competition. It's unpredictable. But as I mentioned earlier, like, we don't know what the future is going to be. You can only plan for the best. You can only plan, you can only hope for the best. You can plan, but you don't know if things are going to work the way you want. Even more so if you're in a field where there is a lot of competition. Suddenly a competitor is going to create a business next to yours. Well, what's going to happen? So that could be very stressful. But as we saw, being stressed prevents you from thinking rationally. You might be in trouble just because of the stress. There's also the situation of, well, it could be a good thing, but you're at a state where you're ready to grow. You're ready to scale up. And then it means that you need to learn new things. You need to hire staff. You need to manage larger teams, and maybe that's something you've never done before. So that's very stressful. And also another situation that when entrepreneurs are stressed is how to balance my responsibilities, how to balance my personal life with my business life. You want to make a good living, you want to give money to your family so that they have a good life, but are you making the right choices? Are you still taking time to be with your family? And that's so important. I can take my own case. My parents were entrepreneurs and they worked very hard, but they never had time for us. So when finally the business was successful and they would have a time, well, that's the time when we were 4, we left home. So at the end, my dad didn't know anything about us. We were, okay, he was my dad, but he didn't know anything about me personally, just superficially. So is it worth it? So those were situations that entrepreneurs have to live and go through, in their stressful life. Okay, so let's talk about preventing stress. So how can you prevent stress? Well, first, it's important to set clear boundaries. You need to learn to say no when necessary. It's very important. You're the only person who can actually decide on how to use your time. And I know it's tempting to keep on being available to your clients, even more so if you're a beginner. But the thing is, you're the one paying the bill. I remember I was developing my second website, so I was new. And I had that client, and she kept on asking, like, new design and new design and new design. And I'm like, oh, I was lacking the experience, of saying no. But at one point, I came to her office, and she's like, oh, can you present us another one? And I'm like, I'm sorry, but no. I mean, if you want a new design, then that would be extra money. And she simply looked at me and she said, oh, okay. And in my mind, I was like, wow, I could have asked earlier. I could have said no earlier. But, I was worried. I'm like, oh my God, she's not going to like me anymore. Or, well, no, she just said, oh, okay. And I'm like, luckily, that was my second project. So I learned from it. I learned to say no. So it's important to set work boundaries to maintain a healthy work-life balance as well. So it's saying no to yourself as well, maybe it's to set up like work hours. Take the example I gave you with my parents. They were working like crazy, and they missed their kids' life. No connection at all. So set your own boundaries. So setting boundaries for others, but also for yourself. It's also a matter of scheduling and prioritizing. It's to plan your day and with a clear schedule, and to use a system of blocks on projects. And during those blocks that you set up, usually it's good to have blocks of 2 to 3 hours, and you work on your project nonstop. Like, you don't get disturbed by notification. You don't check your email. You don't do anything like that. And I think it's very important to use that time, to block time, to make an appointment with yourself, to work on your business, on the future of your business. Because again, maybe you're taken into your day-to-day activity, but maybe initially your vision of your business was something bigger. But because you keep on doing doing day-to-day activities, which are good because you're working for your clients. Well, but then you never work on getting bigger on your vision of what needs to be done, what is the next step. So it's important to make an appointment with yourself and block that time, and it's precious because we tend to put other people before ourselves. So, but if you keep on doing that, well, nothing will change. To optimize your time, what is good, what is recommended, even as a small business, is to put system in place. There are routine tasks that we do over and over and over again. Well, the good thing is to optimize those tasks, to streamline the repetitive tasks, so that you don't have to think about what needs to be done. Maybe your social media. Okay, every Monday, every Wednesday, I publish something, and this is the step. I don't have to think about it because I planned it. It's already there. Rather than, okay, what am I going to do? See, you need to be efficient. Also, it's understanding the importance of delegating tasks. You don't have to handle everything yourself. It's important to delegate tasks to employees or external contractor. So how do you do that? Because I know it's a problem for a lot of entrepreneurs. They cannot do the thing as good as mine. Well, I talk about the systems. Systems allow you to give instructions to somebody else so that they're doing the same thing or they're doing the thing the same way as the way you're doing them. So you keep consistency for your clients. But how do you delegate? There's a tool here that is called the Eisenhower matrix, which is very simple and logical, but hopefully that will help you. So first, let's talk about the green quadrant. Here we have tasks that are important and urgent. What do? Well, you actually do those. You actually work on those yourself because those are tasks with deadlines and consequences. They're important. You have to take care of them. Then you have the tasks that are not urgent and not important. So what do? You schedule them. It's coming back to your vision of the future. Take the time. See here, it says tasks with unclear deadlines that contribute to long-term success. That's exactly what I was talking about earlier, about taking the time to work on things that for the future. Then you have things that are not important and not urgent. Well, those are the ones that you need to delegate. You need to optimize your time. So it's all the tasks that must get done, but don't require your specific skill set. Also, like let's say that you're charging your client $100 an hour, for example. Well, you better work for a client at that rate rather than doing the cleanup of your place that you might be billed by somebody else. $20 an hour. It's you have more chances to make more money if you use your time wisely. So also to prevent stress. Oh, sorry, delete. There's I forgot the last one. So the last one is not urgent, not important. Well, you don't do anything with it. You're wasting your time. Those are distraction and unnecessary tasks. So you just don't do anything with it. Now, another way to prevent stress, and it's logical, but we don't do it as small business owners, it's important to take breaks. We need to recharge the batteries. And we need here a short walk or quiet time to reflect, and that will help us to reset our mind. It's important to just take the time to stop. And actually, that's a lot of time, that's where your greatest idea are going to come up. Important as well to have a support system and to surround yourself with other entrepreneurs, because we tend to think that, oh, poor me, it's only me living that situation. It's only me. Well, no. If you surround yourself with other entrepreneurs, you will see that everybody is pretty much going through the same experiences as you, and that's the opportunity to share experience. So then you see that what's happening to you, it's not just you. Network. You can create. You can find great partners that might be the solution to your problem. You might also find motivation and inspiration, by hearing everybody else's stories. They might be able to help. Who knows? But if you don't speak up, if you don't share with others, well, you don't know that maybe the solution is right there. and they can give you like emotional support because they went through the same experiences, so they're going to empathize uh, and be kind to you because they understand. Preventing stress, as we saw, like money is a lot of time a problem or a reason for stress, is learn to manage your money. So create and stick to a budget. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs, to them, like bookkeeping, accounting is like a dirty word. They don't want to take care of it, but it's so important. It's your money, you need to know what's going on. So create and stick to a budget, build an emergency fund. Business, like during a year, any business goes through cycles. There are some ups and downs. So make sure that you build an emergency fund so that when it's a lower period of time, like a slower period of time, well, you still have the money to survive, to pay your bills. Same idea. Review your cash flow regularly. Make sure that money is in. Make sure that you send invoices to your clients. I've seen some clients, they didn't send invoices, so obviously the money was not coming in. Nobody's going to pay you if they didn't get an invoice, And yeah, it's not fun, but it's so necessary. Plan for taxes and expenses. I remember taking an Uber car and the driver was upset because, I have so many taxes to pay. Well, guess what? When you're an entrepreneur, you have to pay your tax when you're declaring your taxes, and it's part of it. So just put the money aside so then you're not in a bad situation. And I guess that summarizes a bit of everything else is invest in financial education. Don't give the key to a bookkeeper. Don't give the key to an accountant. Understand what's going on, because if there is a problem, if they are late to pay their GST, your GST actually, and you go back to them, they will say, oh, not my problem. They don't take responsibility, but the government is going to ask you, okay, what's going on? You're late, up. Then you need to pay more, you have penalty and you have interest and you have all that stuff. So it's really important. Focus on what you can control, which I already mentioned, and it's to adopt the Stoic principle of focusing only on what's within your control. To realize, take the time to think about the situation. What is it that I can control? Okay, I can control that. Okay, how am I going to find the solution? And us as business owners, entrepreneurs, we're problem solvers. So we tend to think like that. There's a problem. Okay, there's a solution. Well, guess what? The thing is, there are some situations where we don't have any control. So let's not worry about those because, it's out of our control. Also, another way to prevent stress is to practice negative visualization. So it's to imagine the worst case scenario and prepare for it. Maybe you have a plan B, a plan C, a plan of, you have the whole alphabet if you want. And just to prepare about, okay, this might go wrong, and I'm okay with that if it goes wrong. What am I going to do? Then, that would work. Also, think about the fact that nothing is permanent, So both successes and failures are temporary. It's sad for the successes. Obviously, we want to have more successes. But what about failures? Well, they're also temporary. So let's think about that. And celebrate small wins. Every time we celebrate something, even a small something, we have a boost of dopamine, and dopamine is good for us. It counterfeit the problem, or it solve the problem or part of the problem, or mitigate the stress. So let's celebrate. So those were all ways to prevent stress. I'm going to share now how you can manage stress. I'm looking at the time, so I guess we won't have much time for questions, but let's see how we can go. So how to manage stress? It's first to identify what are the triggers, what are your triggers, because what might be stressful to you might not be stressful to me. So by identifying the source of stress, it's the first step in effectively dealing with it, because in what situation you are stressed. So what you can do to figure it out is to create a stress log. You keep a journal for a week and you write down each stressful event, what happened, when and where it occurred, your emotional and physical reactions, and how you responded to the situation. Was it a good way that you responded, or was it a bad way? So obviously, it's learning how to handle and to approach some situation that you know to be stressful to you. All right, so that's one way. Also, another way is to reframe your thought. For example, I'm going to give you an example. Instead of saying, "Oh, this client is impossible to please," well, maybe the way you can think about it is, well, okay, that's a way for me to improve my problem-solving skills and potentially create a great testimony. Okay. So rather than seeing things like negatively, say, okay, what can I find that could be positive? What is the silver lining in that situation? So the steps is to identify the negative thought and write it down, to recognize the impact. Because the thing is, when we are upset or stressed, or it's us suffering, it's not the person on the other side, it's really us. So it's to think about the effect that it has on you. And then to challenge your thought. And the kind of question you could ask yourself is this thought based on fact or assumption? We do so much assumption. It's part of the future thinking, but in the bad way. What evidence do you have that support or contradict this thought? Do you know for sure? Do you know? And also, how would I advise a friend thinking this way? We're so good giving advice to somebody else, but not to ourselves. Then you find alternatives, solutions. What are at least 3 alternative ways to view that situation? It's forcing you to be creative, to get out of your mind and being more creative. Then you create a positive reframing. Transform the original thought into a more balanced and positive statement, such as the example I gave you. And visualize. You close your eyes and you imagine yourself succeeding in that situation, embodying the new positive thought. Okay, that's going to make you so much more relaxed because you're not so negative or not as negative. So, for example, instead of saying, "I'm not good enough to run this business successfully," we tend to exaggerate too, because otherwise that wouldn't be fun. So it's like, "Oh my God, I'm the worst of the worst. I'm not good enough." Blah, blah, blah. Well, what about I'm constantly learning and improving my skills to run my business effectively? That's having an open mindset. What you can do also is practice visualization. And this time around, earlier we talked about visualization, about what could be the worst that could happen to get ready and prepared. What about visualize? I'm going to make it work. Successful outcomes and positive scenarios. We know that people are in sport. That's what they do. They see them as winners. What about we would do that? What about spending 5 minutes visualizing ourselves confidently presenting our product and service just before it happens? There's also something called the power pose. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but you're like the Wonder Woman, or I see there's only women here. You're like, I'm the Wonder Woman. It's going to work, and I'm going to be good. And of course, you don't do that in front of everyone, but you go in the washroom and say, "Oh, I'm the Wonder Woman," even in the washroom. Now I'm going to share with you a tool that is coming from the neurolinguistic programming. It's called the Circle of Excellence. So you visualize a circle on the ground, okay, on the floor, and then you're going to anchor positive states. What you're going to do is think of time when you felt confident, powerful, and any other positive situation experience that you had. And while holding that memory, you step into that imaginary circle, okay? And you it's like as if you're back into that situation where you were so good, where you felt so well, all right? So you do that, and then you're going to reinforce the states. You're going to step back out of the circle and repeat the process over and over and over again, okay? And when you don't feel right, you're going to use that circle. You imagine that circle again, you know, and you step into it. You step because you anchored all positive emotions before. Then, ideally, well, when you stepping in your circle, you're back to that state, you know, that positive state. Sorry, I'm checking time again. I'm nearly at the end. Another tool that I want to share with you is the emotional freedom technique or technique tapping. It's EFT. It's called EFT. It's a way to relieve stress, and it may seem a bit woo-woo, but it is actually used in cases of PTSD. Has been studied, you know, so it's not me telling you that thing. It's really used in heavy cases, and so it's called tapping or psychological acupressure, because the way it works is you're going to you're tapping with your fingers on acupuncture point, you know, except that there are no needles. I think that's super good because of needles. You know? And so quickly, I'm sharing with you the way it works. And obviously, I'm not going to give you a course on that like in the few minutes that we have left, but I encourage you to research that online. You have plenty of resources online. You can do it to yourself, or you can there are some practitioners that you can pay for that. But if you can do it yourself, why not? So you identify the problem causing your stress, and then you rate it. You rate the intensity from 0 to 10. And then you create that phrase as you're tapping. So I'm going to show you a map of the place where you can tap. And you keep on saying that and repeating that same sentence. And so this is an example that I'm sharing with you. Even though I feel very stressed because I have a new competitor, I accept myself and my feelings. Okay. And what it does, it's relaxing. It's relaxing the fact that you're typing, because it's an acupuncture point, it's really relaxing your brain. It's not going to solve everything, you know, let's be clear about that, but it's helping. And that's what we're talking about. And then, so then you do the tapping sequence. This is the points. There are many points, 9 to 12, that you can use. And you just keep on saying the same thing and tapping on all those different areas. And you're going to be more relaxed. And the final solution, but it's a bit repeating with another slide. It's the importance of contacting with your support system. It's very lonely to be an entrepreneur, even more so if you're a solopreneur, and you need connection. We need connection as human in general, but entrepreneurs, we need that. Because these people we're going to meet, they know what we're going through. They understand it, and they will be our best friends, you know, because they understand. So that was the last slide, and I'm sharing with you some ways to contact with me. I have a newsletter, and you can follow me on LinkedIn as well. I'm working currently on leadership workshop specifically for small business owners and solopreneurs. So if you're interested, I would encourage you to join my newsletter, and so that you will know when they will be ready.